Hey guys, so I'm trying to um, deliver a little bit of what I would want you to leave with by the end of this course. This is a really interesting story, and I am hoping to probably leave you with a closing, a conclusion, something that makes sense at the end, obviously, because it's online and we don't get to meet personally. With some I do, some I don't. But the good part about this is that we get to meet each other, at least if it's online or over emails. Once again, thank you for that. I'm very grateful to be teaching now for 10 years, and I can only say I love my career. And like I told one of my professors once, when you love your job, you don't get to work a single day. So it's fun, it's enjoyable, you grow. It's so many amazing experiences you gain along the way. What have we talked about so far? Basically about Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. What can I say? When I was asked to build the course, I thought about, what hasn't been said yet. And it almost seems like here in the United States, people give the impression that we know everything about Latin America or the rest of the world. There's everything is out there. There isn't anything new. So when I designed the course and I thought of a helpful setup, I said maybe it would be useful to create like a storyline, something that just might make sense, because history is always told in a way that there's this chunk of information and then this chunk of information and then that chunk of information. We're really never sure the flow that connects everything. So that was my main interest. I wanted to connect certain events. We've spoken about, the pre-Columbian population in the Caribbean, which were the Arawaks that we know today as Tainos, which is still part of the heritage in the islands. And what we have absorbed from them so far is mostly vocab, lexicons, and some of their customs. My grandfather used to drink coffee out of a dried out coconut, and out of fig trees he would make pots and people would eat from them. There's a little washing, I don't want to say device, but you would make it out of the palm trees, and you would fold it in a way that women would go to the river and wash clothes on it. We know them as a petaca. The larger ones are a yagua. People would throw themselves down the mountains with them just to play around and have fun. We get that from them. And then we know about colonization, and we know that the good and the bad that came with it. I love this writing from a South American author who wrote, the Europeans, they took our gold and they left us the gold, which is the Spanish language. And we both, Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, speak Spanish. There's this notion that in Puerto Rico, English is spoken widely, which is not. And I think I might want to develop a course about that eventually, which is something that I'm working on. But we speak Spanish, just different dialects, but it's mostly the same. And it's obviously, we don't have a language issue. We do understand each other. We adopt the Christianity, the language, many customs from Europe. There's so much that we absorb from Europe. And remember, all this history between the both of us starts with migrating, be it the Arawaks coming from South America, Central America to the Caribbean, being the Europeans repopulating the Caribbean, and then eventually you have the African slaves, mostly from the west coast of Africa, you know, those are the ones who basically repopulated the Caribbean, because if you read carefully and if you look, you do further research, you'll notice the black population of the Caribbean surpassed sevenfold, sometimes tenfold, the Europeans in the Caribbean, which is why there was so much suppression. They outnumbered them, and they feared that there would be a rebellion. I mean, then we end up with the Republic of Haiti, how even the U.S. wouldn't recognize it as a republic because it was a black republic. And that's where, you know, the tension between Haiti and Dominican Republic starts, because Haiti expands to the east, it takes over. Then by 1840s, 1844, Dominican Republic becomes independent, but still they reunite with the remaining colonies, which are Cuba and Puerto Rico, and we're all fighting for the Antillean Confederation, which you remember studying about. We end up with people like Hostos, and Hostos happened to be a very important figure in my course because no one talks about Hostos. We only know about Hostos Community College. And people are like, yeah, Hostos, I've heard of it, but why is it named after him? And now you know that, you know, he was a philosopher, he was an educator, the citizen of the Americas, and he happens to be Puerto Rican and Dominican and Cuban too. Hostos is one of my personal inspirations. You know, he believed in the freedom of people through education, which is something that I try to do with my courses. I know it sounds a little like war or rebellious. No, it's knowledge is power. As you know, as much as you learn, you know, you are freeing yourself from ignorance. Then, you know, after that, you have people like Luperón from Dominican Republic, Betances and Hostos in Puerto Rico. You have Martí in Cuba, fighting for, you know, independence from Spain. And then we talk about the American imperialism. And like I say, I think that basically ruins everything. The relationship, you know, of both, well, of all three, Cuba, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, it just ruins it. It ruins that relationship. It tarnishes it. You know, the Americans go in with their personal interests to these three locations. They have, you know, they use three different tactics. Even Haiti, you know, they were there in Haiti twice. It's sad. I think it's mostly because, not only because of the American imperialism, but this is a different culture, and you're trying to come into these countries that culturally they don't synchronize, they have nothing in common. It's just very difficult to try to fix a country that you don't understand their language and you don't understand their culture, which is the problem that we have in Puerto Rico right now. And people are surprised every time they come to Puerto Rico. They're like, wow, this is so not the U.S. Well, welcome to Puerto Rico. We are not the U.S. We are an unincorporated territory, but we are not part of them. We belong to them, but we're not part of them. And the migration continues. You know, you have these stories of Dominicans migrating to Puerto Rico, risking their lives in Oyola. You know what happened the first time I spoke about this in my course? My students didn't know about this. And it was one of the toughest days of my career because most of them were Dominican, and I had to break the news and tell them, well, how many of you know about Dominican migration to Puerto Rico? And they didn't say anything. They said, no, I don't, clueless about that. And I had to break the news and tell them, well, here's this. They risked their lives. They paid thousands of dollars. And some of them die. And those who make it have a really hard path to go. There's discrimination, segregation, exploitation, you name it. And I do have to say this just because a lot of people think that it's all of us Puerto Ricans who have these sentiments towards them. I lived among Dominicans in Rio Piedras when I was an undergrad, and I loved it. I have so much respect for them. I had this neighbor. Well, my landlady was Dominican to start with, so in my commute, not my weekly commute, I would go home every week or so, and my landlady was Dominican, and she had a tenant who was Dominican. It was an older man. Every morning, he would grab a bucket of flowers, roses particularly. Sometimes they were different colors, and he would go to La Plaza to just sell them. He would just sell the flowers, and whatever he couldn't sell, he would come back at night and just go to bed, go back the next morning and do the same thing. I had so much respect for him because no one can say that he was stealing jobs. I did not see one Puerto Rican selling flowers at La Plaza and Rio Piedras. So he was just earning it, And then after that, not only did I live amongst them, but when I became a teacher, when I started teaching there, I had Dominican students. And you know what I learned from all that? You really couldn't tell them apart, Puerto Ricans from Dominicans. You could only know when you heard them speak. Their accent is different, choice of words is different, but they all had the same problems. And I happened to be working at the school that was probably one of the worst places that you could work at. It is just horrible. You had teen pregnancy, drug abuse, school desertion. It was bad. And you know what? Both Puerto Ricans and Dominicans were suffering the same problems. You really couldn't tell them apart because of the social struggle, only because of the accent. But they got along. I never heard a single student calling out names to another one because of their nationality. They would probably tease each other with other things, but not because of the nationality. And I love them all the same. When you're a teacher at the heart, those kind of issues are not important. You really don't care about that. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I don't know why it's so dry here. So I had that experience with me, and I cherish it as one of the beautiful moments of my life when I started teaching. And then when I did my internship also, I had Dominican students, and I couldn't tell the difference. To me, they were all the same. They just wanted, to go to school, get their degree, and be someone, be a better person. I remember meeting the dad of two of my students, and he was just selling stuff at the market, not doing anything, not offending anyone. I remember I met someone too in the north coast of Puerto Rico. I'm from the north coast. I'm from Arecibo. And she told me, I've seen them. I've seen the Dominicans coming through the north coast, looking for shelter, and we've helped them. It's why am I going to call the cops on them? It doesn't make any sense. They've traveled such a long way just to be here, and so many of us support them. Many of us want them to do well. But unfortunately, there are those that, I've heard all sorts of jokes about Dominicans. One of the silliest ones, just not, I don't want to go into the ugly ones, but one of the silly ones were like, what's the Dominican doing with a quarter on each ear? Oh, he's listening to 50 Cent. Really, it's these jokes about race, these jokes about ignorance. People, Dominicans are clueless. They have no education, no civilization. And it's sad. Unfortunately, that still exists. It happens. It's very present. But then there's also those like us that we just want them to do well, and we'll help them, and we'll treat them, as human beings, because they're our peers. Our history connects us together. One thing that always surprises people is that there is a history of Puerto Ricans going to Dominican Republic, and that is actively happening right now, mostly because it is a better option than the U.S. Since we are a U.S. territory, we use the U.S. dollar, and it's worth more than the Dominican peso. People that are retiring, they would go, establish themselves there. The language, they don't have to deal with the language issue like they do here in the United States. Many people are migrating to the United States, and they feel like, I don't have to speak English. Yes, you do, unfortunately. And it takes longer for people to kind of recover from from that problem, that issue, that language issue. They don't have to deal with that in Dominican Republic. Is that migration a little privileged compared to how Dominicans migrate to Puerto Rico? Absolutely. They don't go in a raft or on a makeshift boat like Dominicans do. They take, you know, they take oh my goodness, they go on a plane or they go on a ferry. I'm so sorry about that. I had to come inside and have some water. All of a sudden, this never happens to me, and I got so dry all of a sudden. I guess I was just talking too much. Sorry about that. Puerto Rican migration to the Dominican Republic. And I am a very honest person. One of the particular issues about me is that even though I teach this course, I have never been to the Dominican Republic. And you would imagine that's kind of problematic. Here's the thing. When talking to other people about what it is, you know, what is the Dominican Republic and how do you live there, they're telling me about, you know, it's miserable. Well, not all the time, obviously, but they're talking about how sometimes you have water, running water, and then all of a sudden you don't. Or your electricity, you know, just goes and you never know when it's coming back. Guess what? The same is in Puerto Rico. Again, these people, you know, people all the time think, oh, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, none of these things happen. This happens all the time. And if there's like a hurricane going on, you know, good luck, everyone. I learned how to, you know, bathe with a gallon of water or a bucket. I've learned to drink, you know, warm beverages because there's no electricity. You know, my grandfather, who was a peasant, he knew all the, you know, ups and downs and the tricks to survive without, you know, all this luxury, because he was born in 1920. They didn't have such a thing as running water or power. So for him, it was like, well, you know, we're going back to old times. So yeah, we we do share a lot of those experiences. Me particularly, a lot of people, I've had people try to insult me a little bit because there are many places in the island that I have not been to, and I lived in Puerto Rico for 16 years. I had someone tell me, oh, I went here in Ponce, and I went there to Luquillo, and and I'm saying, well, you know, good for you. I've never been there. Oh, what kind of Puerto Rican are you? Well, I'm the poor kind. You know, when I was growing up, we didn't have a vehicle at home. My mother never learned how to drive. And I got my license when I was 19 because I had to transfer schools. Other than that, we didn't have a car at home. People are poor in Puerto Rico, and that's where I come from. I tell my students all the time, I'm a food stamps child. It happens. I'm not ashamed to say it. But I definitely understood that when you live under this system, it defines your livelihood. It defines your access to education. It defines your access to even to the supermarket. You know, if you're gonna get food stamps and you want to eat healthy, good luck with that. It brings us to one point that I didn't mention in class, but it comes up a lot when I'm teaching on campus, which is basically one of the big differences that exists between a Dominican and a Puerto Rican is that Dominicans have a republic mindset. Puerto Ricans have a colonial mindset, which is why when a lot of people meet me, they say, you know, yeah, Puerto Ricans are known for coming to the US and applying, you know, for food stamps, applying to services, unemployment, Section 8, and so on, because they have the citizenship. While Dominicans, the first thing they do when they come to the United States, they want to open a business. And that's true. I am a Puerto Rican, and I'm not going to deny that. Is it all of us? No. As a matter of fact, the reason why I'm here in New York was for school. I was offered a job the day before I moved here, and I had to turn it down because of grad school. But yeah, you know, we've been colonized for so long, people don't know how to manage other ways. It's terrible. Is it all of us? No. but it's a significant amount of the population that moves to the United States. And that brings us to the last part. When you see this antagonism between both nations and they come to the US, they are no longer Puerto Ricans or Dominicans, they're Latinos. And that creates a few issues. Now we're gonna go to the negative so then we can go to the positive. The negative issue is that someone else is labeling us. We don't choose to be called Latinos. As a matter of fact, a lot of people, when they want to walk away from that label, what they do is they say, you know, I'm not Latino, I'm Dominican, no, I'm Puerto Rican. Which is what I do particularly when people ask me if I'm Spanish, and I will never get over that. And people ask me, are you Spanish? No, I'm Puerto Rican. Oh, it's the same. No, it's not. I'm absolutely positive that people from Spain wouldn't want me to be a Spaniard, and I don't want to be a Spaniard either. I am very proud of where I come from and my ancestry and all that. I am very proud to be Puerto Rican. I am proud of my dialect. I am proud of my looks. Look at my hair, you know. I am proud of how I look like, of how I dress. I mean, you know, the food that we prepare. I am proud of all of that. And you know what? So are Dominicans. Very proud. All of us should. But when this Latino term comes in, all of a sudden we're all Sofia Vergara, or we are all George Lopez, or we are all Mark Anthony and J-Lo. Those are the faces of being Latino, and we're not. And you try to explain that to people, and it doesn't make sense. When you have to fill out the census, it doesn't make sense. People in Puerto Rico are choosing to be mainly white because it doesn't make sense to say, well, I'm black, or I'm white, or I'm Native American, because, you know, since day one at school, we've been told that we are so many things. But, you know, we're labeled, and a lot of our culture, a lot of our particularities are lost when we have one label. And as you read in class, we don't all come here for the same reason. We don't all have the same ethnic makeup. We do not all come in the same way. So you are not honoring, you know, those hardships. You are not honoring those struggles. The other problem that comes with it is that, you know, I am absolutely positive that more than half of the U.S. Non-Hispanic population doesn't know that Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. And you know why? Because I don't have it written here. It doesn't say U.S. citizen. When people look at me, they see ethnic, they see non-white, they listen accent, they say phenotype. They don't see U.S. citizen written on my forehead. And I was born here. And I speak, you know, both languages fluently, but they don't see that. And the minute I speak Spanish in public, that's a red flag for a lot of people. So, you know, it does create a lot of problems. On the other side, when we're labeled as Latinos, in this case particularly Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, we get to suffer the same hardships in the same locations. And I want to say, you know, a clear example of this would be the Bronx, Jackson Heights, in other communities. I mean, Springfield, Massachusetts, Connecticut, even here in Albany. You know, we get to suffer the same the same perils. We get to, you know, deal with the same situations. And when we're labeled, we finally realize that we either team up to make this work or we don't. And my belief is, at the end of this storyline that I was telling you about, being Latino, being a minority where you were not before. Puerto Ricans are not minorities in Puerto Rico, neither are Dominicans in Dominican Republic. becoming a minority in the United States works as a reconciling agency. At least that's the way I see it. You know, we all suffer discrimination, or we all have the same opportunity. You know, if you're Latino, okay, so both of us were Latinos. You know, there are some benefits to that are related to the government, I guess. But it took us to be minorities. It took us to be the same status in a foreign land to finally come together and say, you know what? We were always together since the beginning, and we're gonna make this work. And I think there's a bigger sense of that since these past elections, 2016 elections. And one of those agents that works as, you know, to unify these communities is music. And we read about that, you know, on the last day of class. Music taking us back to Africa, to those who migrated to our islands, taking us back to the natives, the Arawaks, taking us back to the Spaniards that became the impoverished peasants of our islands. You know, we realized at a foreign land that we were made of the same elements. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. And I wanted to make sure that when you leave this class, you leave, you know, with that sense of unity, that you leave with that sense of let's repair, or not only let's repair, but we are in the process of repairing the antagonism between Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. And many people will see this and they'll say, oh, she's just idealizing the situation. It's nothing like that. But I've seen it. You know, I've seen how it's working. I've seen how it's developing into healthy relationships, you know, between both communities. And I think at the end, we are coming together as we were at the beginning. And that's the conclusion of this class. And I hope you enjoyed it. And just pass on the message that at the end, we're all going to reconcile based on our struggles and differences and livelihoods. Enjoy, you know, have a good life, be successful, be nice. Remember to always, you know, pay forward the good that they've done to you. And remember that above everything, being Latino is being from everywhere in the world. Take care. Bye.